Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Marion Minor Cook Athenaeum. My name is Adrian Flynn, and I'm one of your Athenaeum Fellows for this academic year. So science and the arts may just be the endeavors that stretch the human mind more than any others. Ingenuity, creativity, and a burning desire to discover or express something new is core to both of them. The arts and science operate in the spheres of both the most familiar and the most distant, and in many ways seem to overlap in the complexity and nuance of human experience. Albert Einstein, who I'm told was a smart cookie, once said, quote, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He who can no longer stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead. His eyes are closed," end quote. If we look, we are enveloped in the mysterious. Some people even run towards it or run alongside it. Such people often take art and science as two sides of the same coin, and in doing so, recognize the immaculate ways of using one to complement the other, again, to discover or express something new, and push the boundaries of human experience just a little bit further. Linda Alterwitz is one of those people. She's a multidisciplinary artist who uses the authenticity of science and the believability that comes with diagnostic imagery to create work that has an electric presence. She summarizes her work as the fusion of opposites, such as the known and the unknown, the rational and the emotional, with an emphasis on the creative possibilities embedded within the scientific endeavor. Ms. Alterwitz shares an affinity with Einstein for the mysterious, particularly that in the relationship between the human body and an ever-changing natural world, a body of work which she will share with us tonight. Through her presentation, we'll be able to better understand, through the words of Isaac Asimov, supposedly another smart cookie, that, quote, "There is an art to science and a science in art. The two are not enemies, but different aspects of the whole." Ms. Alterwitz's presentation tonight is co-sponsored by the Kravis Department of Integrated Sciences and the Gould Center for Humanistic Studies. As a quick reminder before we begin, please silence and put away your cell phones. As always, video and audio recording is strictly prohibited, and we have an incredible speaker and presentation tonight, so please be present and get ready to engage in constructive dialogue. Welcome to the Athenaeum, and please join me in welcoming Ms. Linda Alterwitz.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Thank you to the Kravis Department of Integrated Science and the Gould Center for inviting me here today. Also thanks to the app for hosting this event. My goal in all my photography is to provide opportunities for people to see the world differently and explore the boundaries of visibility. My curiosity is always about that which can't be seen. Breath, the electrical pulses that run through our bodies, disease, and even feelings of love and loss, and how to manifest these interior phenomena into imagery that not only resonates with the viewer, but stays with them a long time after for its beauty, complexity, and mystery. Why art and science? Bill Fox, some of you might know him. He is an alumnus here at Claremont McKenna College. Juxtaposing art with science lets us step back to a larger frame, a more panoramic understanding of our perceptual mechanisms than would be afforded by looking through the lens of a singular discipline. I got my MFA with a singular discipline, painting, drawing, working with a grid, within a grid, with paint and fluidity, large-scale paintings, kind of following abstract expressionism. This photograph changed the direction of my artistic practice. That's my brain. See my name on there. A lifetime ago, I had a brain tumor. And I live in Las Vegas, and at that time, you get film, A big piece of film, you put the film in a big envelope, and I traveled to Cedars-Sinai, and that's where my doctor was. One time when I went, he looked at my blood work, and he put it up on his light box, my scans, my MRI scans, and he said, "Something's wrong here, it doesn't make sense." He said, "Did you go to the same diagnostic center?" I said, "No, they sent me somewhere else." And he goes, "Take these home, get them out of your file. I don't want to confuse things." I took them home, and when I had the courage to look at my brain, I put them on my photographic light box. Everything changed. The painting that I used to do for decades didn't have the importance anymore. What seemed important was science, my health, and I wanted to find a way to use this diagnostic imagery in my work. I said, "This is cool, how can I do that?" And I'm thinking digital photography. I didn't know how to do it, so I went back to school. I went to college in Las Vegas. For 1 year, I took every class I could in Photoshop, in digital photography. Some I took twice, until I could learn to use the camera and the computer like a paintbrush. This was the first photograph I did of my brain, and I blended it with landscape. For me, it's like a feeling of, the landscape is a feeling of sanctuary and peace, and the image of my brain is a little fearful. It's also feelings of life and death, that dichotomy. The first series I did after I was able to use digital camera as a tool was called Discarded Dreams. Hard to get human imagery right at the beginning, so I used anything I could. This is microscopic imagery of chlorine blended with landscape. My dog's knee after she had surgery, and it was held together with pins, with landscape. Human stem cells. But more than two elements, and I could tell you this is this and this is this. It gets an element, it changes, it transforms to something more mysterious, something more of awe. And that's what I liked about it, not just the layering of two things. It evolved into a transformation. Kind of like the project I did with the students today, a transformative project. Algae, I worked with a scientist from Michigan, and he would send me images of the different algae he's photographing, and I would use it in my art. It was thrilling. Still algae. I used a lot of film too, along with digital, whatever worked best for the image. This was an exhibition, a solo exhibition I had at Los Angeles Center of Digital Art. You can see the scale of the work. While I'm still, questions the complex physiological and psychological issues surrounding the role of science and technology in the context of human health. It's the first series where I was able to use the human image, diagnostic images of the human body. These are PET scans, when doctors look for cancer in the body. Now, it wasn't easy to get permissions for this. Friends, family, friends of friends, friends of family, friends of friends of friends, and permissions, blended with landscape, the same kind of fear and the same kind of comfort. Ron Neiswainer, he's the screenplay writer for Philadelphia. Does anybody remember that movie some years ago? He wrote this for this work. The only thing boundless is love. These remind me of people at critical times in their life with choices or not. I started blending the human image from the scans with fabric. To me, this photograph reminds me of someone with an inability to communicate. This photograph gives me joy, hope. This clicker's not working so good, so I'll go back here. I started blending landscape and fabric with the human image. This was a mid-career retrospective I had of this work. Just breathe. That was heavy work while I'm still. This is an installation of that work. Each of these panels are 20 inches, and it represents a person documenting a person's breath as they breathe. And I'll talk more about it. But for me, it was taking a breath for myself, because while I'm still, it was pretty tough to work with those images. But I'd like to tell you how it all began. I was trying to take a photograph of this. My husband and I were vacationing at Dominican Republic. And I like to bring a camera with me pretty much wherever I go. And I had a medium-sized digital camera and a flimsy tripod. And our favorite time in the Dominican Republic was at the night beach, because the stars were amazing. There was something about the night beach. So I decided I'm going to take a 10-second exposure, just for fun. My husband was laying looking at the stars. And I put the insufficient tripod into the sand, clicked the shutter, and the camera fell back into my hands. It was too heavy. And this is what I saw, the movement of the stars. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I looked over at my husband, and he's looking up at the stars, and his chest is going up and down, up and down. And I'm looking at the back of my camera, going, well, this is interesting. I said, David, do you mind if I put my camera on your chest? I'm going to do it for a long exposure. And I'm going to document your breathing. And, the light bulb. 250 participants later, I did this with friends, family, people I didn't know, people who was suggested I did it with. And I'd go up to them, and they'd lay down in the night sky, under the night sky, and I would say, just breathe, relax your body and just breathe. 30 seconds. And these are some of the images. My daughter did her portrait, the breathing portrait, and she was cold. She was shivering, poor thing. This is Ivana. I don't change the colors. It is what it is. It's a documentation of breath. This was in New Orleans. Every place has got a different GPS, different place. None of them are taken at the same place. This is my mother. She's in hospice. When we took this, she's got a very shallow breath, and she doesn't breathe very deeply and doesn't move too much. This is my daughter's friend, Sarah. And when I looked at this on my computer, I said, Sarah, They look like little squids. What were you doing? She goes, well, I was practicing my yoga breathing. And it was a circular motion. This was in Kauai, in Solitude, Utah, Eugene, Oregon. Self-portrait in Hawaii. I did an artist residency at Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. I worked with the internal medicine residents and with the graduate nursing students. And instead of everybody going out and doing breathing portraits, I had 5 other photographers working with me to do my project. They did a program of music and mindful, meditative, guided meditation before we all went out. This is at the New Mexico Museum of Art. I'm going to go more into the process of just breathe with a short video after this, but I'm going to show you some of the installations. The curator, Kate Ware, I was talking to somebody about Kate Ware, she decided to separate the rows, and I love the idea because it reminded me of a breath in and a breath out. And at the Missoula Art Museum, I said, I like what Kate did. I'm going to just evolve it further in 4 rows of breathing. And here's a little video about the process.
It was a privilege and a unique experience to work with photographer Linda Alterwitz for a special photography project called Just Breathe with Mayo Clinic's Humanities and Medicine program. Over the course of these 3 days, a program was offered in mindfulness and self-care training, followed up with each participant laying down outside on the ground with a camera against their chest pointed at the sky and capturing their breath with a 30-second exposure.
It was neat to look at different parts of landscape and try to feel centered with the earth. It was really a neat experience.
I was totally relaxed and happy, and it brought me back to my childhood, walking in my grandmother's neighborhood. She's no longer with us, so it brought me a little piece of her back to me for a brief moment.
While I Am Still, an exhibition focusing on imagination and creativity, is teaching local students how to be artistic using science.
Harley Harmon Elementary students reflected on a retrospective exhibition, the work of Linda Alterwitz, a visual artist.
When I make work that's a complicated beauty, it says something else.
She showed the students how she blends her art with science and technology.
I use machines with high technology to get part of the images in my work, and I also use a really low-tech camera, advancing the film, and it overlaps, and then you see it 2 frames on one. And it's kind of these 2 worlds of process that I blend together to make my work. It really takes science and art to stand outside the box. Once Ocean, a project I did for a couple years. It all began with this photograph of my Uncle Elias's hand holding his EKG card. He carries it with him all the time. And what I liked about this photograph was this human connection between the internal rhythms of our bodies and his hand, his body. That got me thinking about EKG EEG internal rhythms. So I looked at research papers and pulled out images and started blending them with landscape, very large scale photographs. This was at Basin Range National Monument, blended with the EEG. This is an activation chart from a functional MRI. I worked with Cleveland Clinic doctor who's working on Alzheimer's. And he did a study of brains. And this was studying Somalis and their control groups. And I was able to use his work, these patterns, brain patterns. And again, I put it with landscape. And sometimes I think a lot about this series. And I think I like the work a lot. But I like what it led to. And a lot of times we do work, as an artist, I'll do work that maybe I can't figure out for another 10 years of what I was doing. But right now I know that it led to the next one I'm going to show you. But visually I like it. But it led me to this, self without interpretation. I was using the doctor's research paper and his imagery. I was using the scientist from Michigan, his algae. And what if I can get these myself? What if I can create these from participants? I loved working with participants. So I purchased a 16-sensor medical-grade EEG device, and I asked each of my 85 participants a 6-minute questionnaire on love and loss. And I set certain parameters. They came into my studio. I had asked them to sit down, uncross their legs, uncross their arms, just close their eyes, don't move their body, and don't answer the questions, but think deeply about the questions I'm asking them about love and loss. Think about someone you love very much. Think about the reasons you love this person. Imagine smiling at this person and that person smiling back at you. Imagine giving the person a hug and feeling the warmth of their body. This is love. And then it goes to loss. Think about someone you have lost. Now imagine this, your eyes are shut, you've got an EEG device on your head, I'm recording your brain waves and asking you these personal questions. For some, it was pretty intense. After that, I asked them each to write something about the experience, if they chose to. And also, I asked them about a place in the natural world where they considered their sanctuary. I'm going to show you another short video about process, but this is an example of the fabric that I got a screenshot of their brainwaves and printed it onto medical gauze. And before we do the video, I just want to show you, this is a recent exhibition at the Lilly Museum of Art, and each of those 11 banners are 2 stories high, and they each represent an individual with their brainwaves going all the way from one story to the other, and with some of the words that they wrote about the experience, about how they felt on the banner. So kind of like the breathing portrait. It's kind of like a brainwave portrait. But I'm not interpreting it because I can't interpret the EEG. But it is an interpretation a little bit. But this is about the process. intrigued by the relationship between our internal human rhythms and the natural environment, whether it's our beating hearts, our breath patterns, or the electrical waves of our brain. The photographs in my project Self Without Interpretation offer a remembrance that the Earth and the collective minds of its people are intrinsically connected. To help me visualize these connections, I invite participants to wear a multi-electrode, medical-grade EEG device while I electronically capture each person's brainwaves. To encourage each person to connect to his or her inner feelings, I initiate a 6-minute series of questions about love and loss in their lives and ask each participant to think deeply about the answers. I inquire about a meaningful environment within the natural world that he or she turns to for sanctuary, providing me with necessary information in preparation for realizing this photographic series. I select a portion of each person's brainwaves and print this onto surgical gauze. I often manipulate the gauze by cutting, tearing, and pulling, enabling me to have a more personal approach to the engagement in my overall project. I then head out to nature to find each person's representation of sanctuary, searching for invisible threads that bind us to Earth. I walk within the grounds, carrying only my digital camera and the prints derived from each person's brainwaves. I release the medical gauze into the natural environment to photograph the interplay of the mind and the Earth. It's my hope that my work will inspire a connection between others and the natural environment. The thermal camera. My relationship with the thermal camera began in 2013. How it began. My husband was watching a TV show of cops, and he saw a dog chasing a man, all white on a black background, and he knows how I'm intrigued with the unseen. And he called me over, and I said, oh my God, and this is in 2013, how can I get this technology? I've got so many ideas. Typically, thermography is used for surveillance, espionage, detection of chemicals, radiation, nuclear emissions, explosive materials, and heat leaks in your home. My use of thermal photography began with pure visual fascination. My dog was a great model. But I learned so much. In 2013, I went to animal sanctuaries. I learned that reindeer, their antlers, I thought it was like fingernails, like bone, but it's not. It has blood and fur, and it's the same temperature as their body. Horses are incredible with they don't have a lot of fur. I learned that butterfly wings are transparent. I learned a lot about turtles and landscape and shadows and the heat and the coolness that shadows provide, and dried flowers, the heat that they have. But I got kind of lost. I lost the ability to communicate using the thermal camera, and I did this for 7 years. I have thousands and thousands of photographs. I learned a lot. but I just couldn't find the ability to communicate until the pandemic came. Injection site, making the vaccine visible. It was about documentation, conversation, and I'd like to tell you how injection site began. This is my neighbor. I was over there, and she said that her arm hurt. She had the vaccine 9 days before, and nothing. She says, it doesn't look red or anything. I said, do you mind if I go get my camera and take a photograph of it? And this is what I saw. And again, I go, oh, holy moly. And then the project kind of appeared before me, participants, everything. At first, it was pure fascination, visual fascination. And I can't say that there's any, I can't read this. Everyone's different as of breathing patterns, as different as brain waves. There's no, I can say the first 2 weeks there was more inflammation than the last 2 weeks, but not always. In some, there was not much inflammation at all. But it was very interesting, and this, especially during the pandemic when people didn't want to get too close. It started with people in the healthcare. And I had some friends who were doctors. I'd go there and I'd photograph their staff because they got the shots first. Then the older population got younger and younger. This is 29 days. And I photographed the other arm too to make sure that this person just wasn't that way all around their whole body. If you're wondering, that's a hairy chest. I like how her hair mimics her arm, the curly braids. And younger people. This is the exhibition at UNR. This is just one part of the exhibition. I didn't want the images to be, oh my goodness, this is scary, I'm not going to get a vaccination. Or some people will think, oh, it's not neutral to my body, I'm going to get inflammation. Yes, it was intriguing to me, but I felt I wanted to communicate further. Oh, this is a fun fact. At the opening of the exhibition, we had the health department from the university come, and they were giving injections of all sorts of vaccines. So is it art, right? We had 12 vaccinations during the opening. I thought that was very interesting. So like we have outside there, I decided to send a survey to all the faculty, students, staff at UNR, and to my friends, asking why they did or didn't decide to have the vaccine. And I got a lot of different responses, all different ages. Talia, age 9, I wanted to keep my body safe from COVID. Joe, age 60, didn't need it. Civic duty, Joanne, age 58. There's some very interesting comments here, as there are out there. But I wanted to show both sides. And I know that with all the divisions in our country, there's going to be people who, yes, I am definitely getting a vaccine the day it comes out. And this person says, there's no way in hell I'm going to get that vaccine. But if you have hundreds of comments, and you're intrigued by the visual photographs, and you read the comments, and maybe you'd have a discussion and talk about it. Maybe people will go like this instead of here, just a little bit. I talked to a woman who said, I'm not getting it. My mom has a blood clotting disorder. Yeah, I don't know if I get it if my mom had a blood clotting disorder and it's hereditary. I get it. I went like that. And by the time I was like reading all these comments of people who didn't want to get it, you know, I was more here. I wasn't here. And if the world could do that a little more, I think that's positive. I like how, kind of like social media, you have comments on comments. And then somebody from the faculty, you guys can still get free vaccines. That was a great one. But we have hundreds of comments. And the conversations continue. I choose to get it out of protection of the people I love that are immunocompromised and unable to get it. I'm continuing the project, I think. Monkeypox. Hepatitis B. Shingles. Now people are getting 2 vaccinations on one arm, and maybe 1 or 2 on the other arm too. Pneumonia. I don't see a difference between COVID and, I don't see a difference. I just see inflammation and heat. And I'm going to end on this quote by Ben, age 40. It's one of my favorite quotes. I sought out the vaccine after learning about the 40 years of development that went into it. It was amazing that new technology led to the creation of a new vaccine so quickly. I chose inoculation out of a sense of civic duty. I felt like I was part of something larger than myself and was helping to keep others safe. People, myself included, don't think about others enough. The pandemic gave me pause and presented me with an opportunity to be more empathetic. And that's my presentation.
Thank you so much for your talk, Ms. Alterwitz. We'll now be moving into the Q&A portion of the evening. So if you have a question, please line up on one of the 2 walls. We'll be alternating between the microphones. If you come up to ask a question, please introduce yourself, say your name, what school you are, what year you are, what you're studying, where you're from. Please keep your questions short, about 1 to 2 sentences, and please refrain from follow-ups. Looking forward to hearing your questions.
Okay, hello, I'm Leo. I'm a sophomore at CMC. And so throughout I study philosophy here currently, and I'll be doing PPE soon. And one thing that philosophy has really helped me gain in my life is this idea of the inexplicable and more of an acceptance of the inexplicable. There are certain things that we take for granted, existence, logic itself, that are so helpful to us, that appeal to us so much, but are simply not they're not something that you come to learn, but rather something that you just simply grow into. So it seems to me from your art that you have a similar idea of the human mind's connection to Earth, that you find this to be something so very, very appealing to you, yet perhaps inexplicable by science. So I wanted to ask you, how did you come to have this appeal, or how did this come to appeal to you, this connection between the human mind and the Earth? And just generally, how has it informed your art?
I think it came to me, and I've always been connected to the natural environment since I was little. I grew up in Gary, Indiana, in the sand dunes, and spent a lot of time in the woods and the sand dunes. So that's just part of who I am, and that connection is who I am. So it naturally is going to be part of my feeling of sanctuary and comfort. Did that answer that?
Yeah, and you did talk about this in your presentation, but how has it impacted your art?
The feeling of comfort, and when it comes to, when I had that brain tumor, the fear, and I always work with dichotomies, one feeling against the other in my work, some kind of contradiction. So if I'm going to be scared, and fearful, I want to temper that with comfort. It helps me move through my day.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Linda. Thank you for the inspiring talk. You already know me, but my name is Jason. I'm a freshman from CMC, planning to study in psychology and philosophy. And my question is that you are an artist, but since you work in the intersection between art and science, do you think of yourself also partially as a scientist or not? Yeah.
Maybe a wannabe scientist. But no, I don't think of myself as a scientist. But I tell you, when I was doing the experiment with the EEG, I felt like one, putting parameters on and sitting down, uncross your legs. It was just intuitive for me to know that, if you're going to go like this and chew gum, that your brain waves are going to show that. So I think of myself as a logical person and also a creative person. I use both sides of my brain, I think, pretty well. Even as a kid, I was really good at math, but I was always really good at art. So I think I'm kind of unique in that way, that I balance the two. Hence the balance of fear and comfort. I balance both sides of my brain of, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hi there, my name is Luke. I'm also a freshman here at CMC.
Hi again.
And I just want to say I loved a lot of the art pieces, especially some of the ones that used x-rays. And so I was curious as to what first inspired you to combine, the x-rays and cloth, right? That seemed to be a very common theme through many of those pieces.
With cloth instead of the landscape, I just try everything. There's so many things to try, the landscape. What is it that you live within the landscape, but your body is protected by clothing, a protection element? So I started photographing cloth and blending it and seeing if it worked. I had no idea if it would work or not, but it did. I work a lot with the element of chance. And I'm not afraid to fail.
So hi.
Hey.
My name is Marilyn. I'm also a freshman at CMC, and I really love your work, especially the conceptual meaning behind it, so the combination of art and science. And one point that you mentioned through the presentation is that you seem to almost find meaning in your work as you progress and try things out. Would you say that's correct? Yeah. What does that process look like for you, and how can other visual art students, stuff like that, find meaning in their work?
I get an idea and I run with it. The light bulb goes in front of my head when I saw my husband breathing on the beach. It's like, oh, okay. Well, there's a big project. So I run full speed at it, not even knowing if it's going to work. But if I have a belief in it, I'll just continue to run. And then I write. And then I put it all together. Some people will write first and get the concept and everything together and then try to make it. But I just go with the creative first, whether it works or it fails.
Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Alterwitz. Thank you so much for this really great presentation. My name is Ishan. I work in fellowships at CMC. You mentioned that you got your first subjects, friends, family, friends of friends, so on and so forth. Did you find yourself letting the subject influence the final craft, or do you find yourself trying to stay away from that? Does it influence the work at all?
No, it doesn't influence.
Elaborate. Tell me more.
Pardon?
Tell me more. Is it just because you are making a separation from it deliberately? Okay.
Yeah, they're scans.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Thank you.
And I can't let myself. So it's like they are scans of this person. That's the hard part of it.
Yeah.
So you have to separate. I don't think I could have dove in so deeply as I did if I would have let myself go in that deep.
Thank you.
It was a challenging project.
Sure, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Maya. I'm a sophomore in CMC. I study biology and psychology. And I was wondering, in your work, which I really enjoy, by the way, there's a lot of play between, humanity and science, and then, human nature, but also, the world, right? And that's kind of, a really big thing. But I'm curious how you feel, time plays into that, because I know, long exposure is something that's, capturing a longer moment than, a single picture. And I was wondering what you thought about, time.
Definitely an element in my work that's repeated.
Right.
I mean, when I take recordings of the brain, it's 6 minutes.
Right.
I don't. It's an element, but I don't really have a good answer for it. It's just an element I work with. I don't think I can expand upon it, though. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay.
But it's definitely an element I work with.
Yeah.
Setting those parameters.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Linda. Thanks so much for that. And the artwork is beautiful. And I love how you find beauty in unexpected moments and unexpected places. I wanted to hear you reflect a little bit on the nature of creativity, if I can ask, and also, in particular, if you can talk a little bit about what one does when one gets stuck. How does one get oneself unstuck?
Well, my trick is that you always have 2 or 3 series going at once.
Structured procrastination.
You see it overlapping. So if one's not working or you are stuck, I'm really quite serious. You go to the other series and get working on that. And maybe in a year or two, maybe you go back to that one or you don't. So I always have nets, because it's really scary as hell to be in a project and get stuck and not have anything else. So that's just me. And with art and my life, I'm all about balance. So it's part of that balancing act of not letting yourself fall too much, because there's these 2 series here.
Yeah, it's interesting also to think about the balance between knowing that something's working or not knowing that something's working, and how you decide. I mean, I'm kind of interested in that idea as well. How long do you try before you decide that something is working or isn't working, when you're trying a combination of new things?
It always works for me.
Oh, it does?
It always works, but, well, except for once.
Now we're going to want to know about that. So.
It always works. Now, whether it's accepted or not, that's the question. Whether it gets movement but for me, I wouldn't do it. And I'm not afraid if it doesn't get accepted, that's okay, because I learned from it. Like Once Ocean, it didn't really take off like I thought it would, but I think it's going to one day. But it led me to the next project. So it was successful because it got me here to there. The failure. This is a good one. I thought I would try to make, I would take icing, right? You know, the kind of icing, and I would make these marks like EEGs, like painting with icing. And I got this big paper and I was making these things and it looked pretty cool. And then until the bugs got to it. That was a failure. Total failure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Of course.
I was wondering, it was cool to see like just how integrated you are in hospitals and kind of working with, you know, when you had your fellowship, right, at the Mayo, or the residency at the Mayo Clinic. I'm wondering though, how have you felt really accepted by like the medical community, the people that like just kind of with all your ideas and things that have come in, or have you had any kind of like pushback from people in the science realm?
I wouldn't say pushback. I think they think it's interesting. It's like, well, this is interesting. But what I do feel and I'm not sure if that's really an acceptance, it's maybe just something, I don't know, unique to their mindset. But what I do feel is acceptance from is integrative medicine combined with I'm working with UNLV right now, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, with the medical students in integrative medicine program. There, the work is very accepted. So yes and no, and maybe.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, Linda. Thank you for your talk. I'm Steve. I'm a senior here. So my question is, I know for a lot of people, doing art is very therapeutic. And I'm kind of curious, you know, if, you know, the process of making art out of certain like scary CT rays or X-rays would make you feel particularly therapeutic or even more therapeutic than other forms of art?
I think that first project, Discarded Dreams, was a very therapeutic series for me. I think the first year after I had that brain tumor removed, I think it was a healing process for about a year until it transformed into something more than healing, and people were seeing this work and seeing more than me personally, but seeing what it did, a transformation process for them. So yes, it can be healing, and I think it was for me for a little bit, and then I just moved on.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Armin, a freshman at Claremont, McKenna. I'm wondering, in your conversations with the scientists and other people in medicine and science, as you've been speaking, how have they viewed your projects to use those like warmth rays, like the photographs, in their medical practice? Like, have any of them thought that, you mentioned at the dinner how you knew your friend had COVID because of the colors of their arm when you took a photo. So how have they been receptive to that?
Well, first of all, I didn't know she had COVID. I just knew she had a fever because my camera said she was 101. And I said, Ivana, do you know you have a fever? I was photographing her arm. She goes, oh, well, maybe it's just because of I just got my vaccine. But she ended up having COVID. But that was interesting. So, yeah, and what was the question?
Yeah, so what have scientists thought about this? Have they considered, I know you said that integrated medicine at that UNLV place, but like, what have they thought about that idea? Can you elaborate on that maybe a little bit?
I don't think I'm scientific enough, and I don't try to be scientific enough. I'm showing the visual aspects, the intrigue of the thermal camera, of heat patterns, but I'm not trying to prove any hypothesis. I'm not trying to prove anything. So, and I'm real clear about that. When people say, "Oh, what do you see?" I said, "Well, you know, your temperature's this, and I'm just seeing patterns."
Sure.
So,
and sorry to follow up, but like, do you think, have they said anything about how, if they think there's potential in this idea? I mean, I'm sure you're going to focus on the art practice, but like.
No.
Okay.
And I wouldn't even go there, like, because I'm not trained in thermography for anything but visual intrigue.
Okay.
Just as an artist, I wouldn't even go there, like for breast, looking at breast for breast cancer. No,
Okay,
stay
cool.
clear.
Thanks.
Yep.
Hi, Linda. Hi. My name is Icy. I'm a sophomore at CMC studying philosophy and religious studies. Thank you so much for your talk. I really liked your photography pieces. And I wonder, what do you think is the biggest strength of using visual art to represent your ideas as well as drawing a connection between human and nature compared to other forms of arts?
Visual art has the strength to get people's attention if it's a strong work. And it can speak to a multitude of concepts, topics, through art, using it as a tool. So
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm a sophomore at Pomona studying economics and art history. I come from a really artistic family. My father is an artist, and my aunt also practiced art in France and China now. I was wondering, as art gets more and more commercialized, how has the idea of popularity and acceptance by the public affect your creative work?
how has, say, popularity?
Popularity and acceptance by the audiences.
Popularity, no. I don't care about it. Acceptance, yes, I like to get my work out there, and I like to get it into museums, and I like to talk about it, and I'm not someone to keep my work in a closet. So acceptance, yes, it's important to me. Finding the right audience is really important to me, and making a difference.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm back with another question.
Good.
So I know that visual art as a career path is quite difficult, and a lot of people say that it's hard to sustain yourself. And I'm just wondering, how do you fund your projects? Yeah, and what is the process like behind the scene?
How do I begin a project?
No, how do you fund a project?
Fund?
Yeah.
Well,
just what is art like as a career path?
Challenging. I find it very challenging. You can self-fund. You can get grants, fellowships. These are things I try to do. It's very challenging for me. Maybe there's other people who, because I'm not in galleries, I don't try to, sales is not my number one thing. If I was really caught up in sales, I wouldn't be doing all that I'm doing.
Thank you for the honest answer.
That's pretty honest, yeah.
Please join me in thanking Linda Alterwitz. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to the Ath. Have a great rest of your evening. We hope to see you soon.